Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. I am great, having a good time. I know we just did the cold open, we just came in, but I have like a post-cold open, that I would like to do now. I think there's a serious problem in the world that needs to be fixed, which is the condensation glass problem. Because I've got a little mug right here with some iced coffee in it, and it's just dripping. And I've got a little coaster,
everywhere.
And that's collecting it, obviously. But I mean, this is a serious problem. Someone needs to come up with a solution to this. I know people do like the little plate under the cup or whatever, but that's not good enough.
That's ridiculous.
No. And you know, this is. I need something. I need something that collects it. Little guy vacuuming up all the water.
Well, in their things, like in the double-lined cup, you know what they should do, all right? Here's a fucking $1 million idea. You have a cup, and then you have a secondary cup that goes around that collects the condensation. And then you screw the bottom off of the secondary cup, and there's like a little shot of water to wash down whatever you're drinking. You know? There you go, because that's clean water right there. It's condensation. It's water from the air.
Well, Charlie, this actually, unbeknownst to our viewers, is not the How Do We Fix This Drinking Problem podcast. This is the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. We come with new TV shows every week, new ideas, new stories, all that jazz. And you have a new idea for us this week. Raising Brains was the title I gave you. You've got something exciting. Now, last time we talked about that you told me that it was going to be zombies, and I didn't think it was going to be zombies, so I'm excited to see where you took this. Because, you kind of left it open. You're like, is it people farming zombies? Is it zombies farming people? Is it have nothing to do with that? What is it?
Yeah. It is a zombie show, a classic George Romero fucking cut off the head, destroy the brain, Walking Dead zombie show. That's what I want. I don't want any of these fast-running zombies. I don't want any, it's a fucking mushroom, and none of that crap, all right? This is there was a meteor from Saturn, and it made people come back from the dead. Classic idea. Zombies take over the world like the world ends. Take that, and then move it 50 years along. Because we've been getting some of that with the more recent The Walking Dead spin-off shows, as they've kind of like they're rebuilding society, but it's like 20 years after the world ended. This is like truly a really long time after the world ended. Most of the people alive now weren't alive when the world was regular, and the ones who do like remember it are like elderly, and they barely have any idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, none of our main characters are 50. So none of our main characters have lived in a pre-zombie world. And so I took that idea, and I took some of the concepts I've seen in other zombie media, most specifically being Wormwood, which is a Australian zombie movie series. There are two of them, I believe. Which is like very weird and kind of out there and creepy, you know? And so I took all these ideas and I was like, well, how would people use zombies? Because that's pretty much the only, like, resource that is just gonna keep expanding, is the number of fucking zombies. And so what are people doing with the zombies? How are they utilizing these mindless, like, Walking Dead to benefit themselves? So that was my initial concept, and just kind of extrapolated from there. And so I'm gonna get into the characters and the events of the show, but how it's going to be structured is basically the first half of the show is going to be our three main characters traveling across this zombie wasteland and encountering all sorts of weird, creepy, kooky characters who are using zombies in different ways. And then our second half of the season is going to be the main characters getting into a city and then kind of uncovering a sort of conspiracy that is happening in the city involving zombies. So that I just want to preface that, and that's how we're structuring the show.
Got it.
So, Maxwell Frank, a grizzled veteran of the Second Headless War, who now makes a living selling trinkets from his marching cart. And whenever I refer to anything as marching, I want you to know that it's being pulled by zombies.
So should I picture
because that's what they're described as doing.
Like instead of the horses, it's zombies, or is it like they're like the wheels?
It's
They're like
I
holding
would
it
say
up like
it's
a emperor or something like that. Like they get a little like there's a bunch of dudes holding it up. You know what I mean? But it's like tight.
It's more like the horses thing. Yeah, it's more like the horses thing, but there is that emperor idea, but it's much bigger. So we'll get to that in a minute because I like that, and it is in the show. But Maxwell Frank, he's the eldest. He's probably it is mid to late 30s. He's this cool grizzled dude who's like he's a total badass. He'd probably be played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan in the show, right? Or some other similarly cool actor. Get John Hamm in there. He's not done a lot of action stuff. That'd be fun. He's got like a machete and he's got a cool jacket and a cool hat and all this stuff. He's got an eye missing, and he is just traveling the wasteland and he sells trinkets and he sells baubles and weird shit that he encounters in his travels. And
is this like a snake oil salesman thing, or is this like he's selling real stuff? That's good.
He's selling real stuff, but he's talking it up. It's sort of a snake oil salesman. He's not going around telling people that this thing's magic or whatever, but he'll for example, he'll have a basketball and it'll be like a pristine basketball that he's inflated and is been still in the box or whatever. And he'll explain that this is part of an ancient game, an ancient ritual that has been a part of human civilization for thousands of years and all this stuff. And he'll just talk up the things he's selling more than they are actually worth. That makes sense? He'll sell a troll doll and he'll be like, this is an ancient idol that represents fertility and good fortune. And it said that if you keep this in your window, it'll be safe. Yeah, or you will ward off evil spirits. Shit like that.
Oh, maybe, it'd be kind of funny if some of the trinkets were he's got it wrong, but he's he's like, this is a talking Elmo. It used to be worshipped by, or a talking Elmosis. It used to be worshipped by young children, and parents would, have to deliver it to their kids on a holiday at the end of the year, marking the end of the calendar. And the kids
the
would
winter
worship
solstice and all this stuff,
and play with this doll, this idol.
Yeah. Because I do want him to have some idea that he knows he's talking shit. He knows he's talking out of his ass a little bit, but he also isn't 100% sure because he wasn't alive during the, before times, But I do think it'd be funny to have that sort of a little color commentary, a little bit oh, here's a man and he is cloaked as a bat and he represents, the darkness of the night or something like that, shit like that. Just a little bit of fun stuff to make a little wink and nod to the audience. Let them know we know we're joking around. We're having a bit of fun. Our second character is Jane Zan. She's a 12-year-old girl whose family was killed by a horde of marching dead. And she, being a resourceful and intelligent young lady, was able to figure out that zombies are attracted to smell and sound. So she coated herself in gore and viscera and was able to live, quote unquote, among the zombie horde for about a year. She would just march with them because she was trying to get away, but she never made it to a group that was able to keep the horde away or at bay. She was never able to get away from this horde, so she just had to walk with them for a year and cover herself in gore every day and every night,
Yeah.
And she would live off of scraps and stuff. And so this young girl has been through so much horror, but she also has kind of how people will sometimes they'll go through such horrible stuff and they'll come out the other side and they'll be the friendliest, nicest guys you've ever met. If you ever meet somebody and they were in prison for 15 years and then you meet them and they're just the nicest guys ever because they know how horrible shit can be. that is kind of her perspective on it. She was forced to grow up really fast, and so she's really bubbly and sweet, but she's bubbly and sweet because she's seen the worst things ever, and she's also kind of terrifying, you know? It's a little bit like having, like, Wolverine, but a little girl. Like, she's just like, she knows how to kill a man.
Yeah.
Like, she is very dangerous, but, like, she's sweet also. She's like a sweet little girl who likes to play with her Elmo doll or whatever. And she is very, like, confident about the future. And she's confident that things will get better, you know? She passed through the valley of death, and is happy about it, is happy on the other side, you know? And so Maxwell Frank finds her in that horde. He sees her and he notices that she's not a zombie. And so this is not really this is going to be a flashback thing that we see at some point in the show, but his cart is on a bridge and the horde is passing underneath of it. And so he lowers down a rope to her as the horde passes, and she climbs up it. And that's how they meet. And he's basically like, I like you, kid. You got gumption. You are cool. You're smart and you're resourceful. And I could use somebody with small hands who can get into places I can't. So you're on my team now. It's just you and me, and we're going to travel the wasteland together.
You,
right?
me, and this unnamed third character that we're about to get to.
Unnamed third character who will show up later. They pick him up, you know? So that's how the show starts, is with them introducing themselves to Jose Engine. You know me, I love my weird post-apocalyptic names. So, Jose Engine. Well, Jane Zan is named after Tarzan, because that was like her mother's like last memory of like the before the end times was watching the movie Tarzan, and she remembered Jane and Tarzan and figured that Tarzan has to be her last name, or like maybe the name is Tar and his last name is Zan, so she named her Jane Zan.
Okay,
just that's how I got the names. Maxwell Frank is just two first names. He didn't get a cool fun thing. And Jose Engine is a former mechanic who worked on the Marching City, who is exiled after sleeping with the president's son. And so we'll encounter, like, the show will open with this cart being pulled by the dead, and it'll be just a fun, pithy conversation between Jane and Maxwell, right? Where they're just talking about something. They're, you know, maybe they're looking at a piece of cultural, like, ephemera from our time and, like, wondering what people did with this, right? Like, they've got a vinyl record and they're, like, trying to figure out how it works.
Yeah.
And they're scratching it and they're fucking with it and all this stuff. And they're just talking and chatting, and they'll see this dude and he's just, like, crying and running, and he's got, like, snot coming out of his face and tears running down his face, and there's one very fat zombie who's just chasing him.
Oh, maybe
and they'll just watch him as he kind of
be kind of funny, so he can't really get away from it.
Oh, that would be actually, that's very funny.
You can like say just far enough.
If it's tied to his waist, and so he's just like running and he's snotting and crying and like drooling all over himself, and he's exhausted. He doesn't have any shoes on, and he's just running through this desert. And they kind of watch him as he just passes across the horizon. And they're like, huh, we should go help him. Yeah, we should go help him. And so they, you know, the cart rides up to him, and they ride up to him while he's running, and they're chatting to him, and they're like, why are you doing this? He's like, hey guys, what happened to you? And Jane gets annoyed, and she just like shoots an arrow into the zombie's head and kills it. And then gets off the cart, stops it, gets off the cart, breaks the chain that's keeping him tied to the zombie, and like says, oh, now can you please fucking tell me your name and what the fuck you're doing out here? And he explains.
Wow, this little kid is quite violent with the language.
Oh, this little kid's fucking, yeah, she's kind of the main character. This is they're kind of have a Joel and Ellie situation, but she's the more pragmatic of the two. Maxwell is he's been around the block a few times. He's fought in some zombie wars and shit like that. So he's more prone to just kind of keeping to himself and not really doing very much, and not like he's happy to just travel the wasteland with his cart and sell his trinkets, right? He's no interest in anything, really.
In anything.
Whereas she's like, he's happy to just live. He's not interested in the future. He's not really interested in like trying to rebuild civilization or whatever. You know, he's just happy to not be a corpse, basically. And so, whereas Jane is a lot more excitable and ready to do stuff. And so Jose explains that he was, you know, he'd fallen in love with the president's son, but the president of the marching city is just, he's against it. He refuses. He refuses to allow his son to not produce an heir. Like, he will not have his son be a gay man who gets married to a gay man and they don't have kids, right? No, you have to make a kid, you know, so that your kid can be the president after you are the president, you know? Believe it or not, presidents are not elected in this crazy future universe.
That's crazy.
Right?
Unheard of.
Whoa. And so that's when we kind of get our first inkling of the marching city as being kind of a central location for this story. But like I said at the beginning, the show's not really about that at first. And so they get him, and Jane kind of convinces Maxwell to take him along, and Max says fine, but he's gonna have to pull his own weight. We're not like, this isn't a free ride. Nobody gets a free ride in the wastes. You know, nobody gets a free ride in the wasteland. What can you do? And he's like, I'm a mechanic. I can work with my hands. I know how to use tools. I know how to fix things. And they were like, fucking prove it. Like, fix this axle on my wagon. It's been fucking with me. It's been making the road bumpier than it needs to be. And he does. He fixes the axle kind of quickly and efficiently. And they're like, all right, you know what? Max is a little bit brought on board. And he's like, fine, you know, as long as you keep doing stuff like that, you keep pulling your weight and making sure that you're useful, we'll keep you around. And Jane is like excited because she gets a new friend. You know, she hasn't talked to another human being. She didn't talk to another human being for a year. And now the only person she has had to talk to since she escaped that has been this fucking cantankerous old man who's like kind of a dick. And the people that she's selling things to. So she's excited to meet somebody who's also a little bit in the same age range as her, because he's 19, Jose is 19, and she's 12. So it's not the same age, obviously, but, you know, a younger person rather than a 37-year-old veteran. And so they're traveling, and you know, they're making it, and they come across this farm. And this was where the idea started. There is one old man living on this farm, and he has beautiful crops, like tons of corn and carrots and potatoes and watermelons and all this stuff, like really awesome, like setup. And they come across and they're like baffled by it. And they meet this old man, and he is like, he's got one leg. He's very obviously not doing all this work himself. And so they're like, how are you doing this? He's like, oh, I've got my helpers. He goes and he shows them into the barn, and you see dozens of zombies all hooked up to like farming equipment, basically. Like pack mules, and they've got like what's it called? What do people put in horses' mouths? Bridles. They got like bridles in their mouths, and they're used to like move crops and move water. And he's got like this really cool setup of how he's using all of these zombies. And this is kind of the ideas that I want to be exploring in the show, is how are these people using zombies to accomplish goals. And he says, yeah, it's working all pretty well. The only problem is the convoy. And they're like, the convoy? Yeah, the convoy. And they come around here every couple of weeks, take most of what I got, leave me just enough to survive, and it's always the worst. It always leaks. I hate leeks. I just grow them because they're easy, but I fucking hate leeks. I don't like them. This is the only food they let me eat, so I've been eating leek soup for like 6 months. It sucks. And they're like, well, how about this? We'll help you out here in exchange for a bit of food, and we'll see if we can talk to this convoy see if we can't set up something a little bit more friendly. And the old man's skeptical at first, but Jane, gives him those puppy dog eyes that she's got. And Jose explains that, like, oh, if you give me a few days, I could probably get this equipment really top notch. It works for right now, but a lot of this stuff looks like it's gonna fall apart pretty soon. You give me a few days, I'll get this place spick and span, ready to go. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, that's fine. And so they stay the night, right? And they eat and they drink and they make merry. This old man is, he's made his own wine, like he's made he grows grapes and he has wine. And it's the first time that, Maxwell's had wine in the last, 20 years. Like, the last time he had wine was before he went off to war. And so he's, kind of, joyous and explaining, oh, I had this buddy in the war. And, this is the first time Jane's ever heard him really talk about himself like that. And so she's, interested and enthralled. And Jose's kind of excited to be learning more about these people who saved his life. And so they spend the night. A few days go by. Things occur, they help out. They're, picking watermelons and corn and shit like that, and all of a sudden the convoy arrives and you see this crazy huge Mad Maxian style massive truck, longer than any truck could ever be. It's not a convoy in the actual sense. It is one enormous vehicle, and you see underneath of it, right underneath of the hood, because it looks like a big truck, but where the wheels should be, there's just feet. Hundreds and hundreds of feet. Yeah, pretty much. Of all of these zombies who are pulling this convoy, and it weighs thousands of pounds, and there's tons of crazy post-apocalypse warrior dudes on top, and they're beating their drums, and they've got swords and arrows and fucking spears and shotguns and shit. And at the front of the convoy is Rotter, the pre-dead, leader of the convoy and a cruel masochist. And you can see him, and he's got one gigantic wound in his head that is just a festering, rotting pustule that you could see brain through. And he's just somehow alive. And I think the only thing keeping him going is being a fucking crazy psychopath, just it loving to inflict pain on people is the one thing that keeps this guy alive. And so Maxwell kind of, he's been talking up a big game about how, I'm not scared of any wasteland trash, a bunch of fucking lunatic drug addicts running around the wasteland acting like it's 25 years ago. This is a civilized place now, right? We don't really even have to worry that much about the dead, And so, and then he sees him, and he sees Rotter the pre-dead, and he just kind of shrivels up a little bit. He's you could hear his butthole pucker, because this guy is fucking scary.
Yeah.
And so, Rotter jumps down off of the front of the convoy, and he starts talking to the old man, ignoring the three of them entirely. And he says, "Where's my food?" And he's like, "Where is my food? It was supposed to be packaged up for us. I've been kind to you. I've been leaving you leeks. But after this, I don't think I'll be leaving you anything. I can always find another farmer. Can you find another leg? Really?" And so the farmer starts to get a little nervous. That's when Jane steps up. And Jane's like, "Hey, bitch, fuck you." Right? She didn't say that. The dialogue's a bit better written. But she starts chatting shit about how her friend Maxwell's gonna kick his ass, and he's a veteran. He's been in 100 wars. He's seen everything and done everything. He's a total badass. And Maxwell kind of is like, yeah, And so that's when Rotter he begins to laugh, joyously, excruciatingly laugh. You can see how much it hurts for him to do or say anything, but the tears running down his face are of joy because he gets to meet a combatant in battle. People don't fight him anymore, because fucking look at him. I haven't been in a true combat scenario in years because people are terrified of me, and my posse, my boys, do all the killing for me. But I love a good fight. What do you want to use? And Maxwell kind of stutters and is like, what do you mean? What do you want to use? Hands or knives? And Maxwell kind of looks down and he's like, knives? And he's like, knives it is. And so he hands Maxwell a case. Maxwell pulls out like a Bowie knife, you know? It's like a big knife. It's probably like about 6 inches long. It's a big enough knife, but it's not enormous. And then Rotter pulls out a machete. It's just like fucking gigantic machete. And he's like, it's technically.
I don't know if that's really a knife. You know? Yeah, he's like.
Yeah, well, too bad. And he starts swinging. And Maxwell just dodges and weaves. And if you've seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I'm assuming. Of course you have. And you remember the knife fight between Butch and the big guy. Mm-hmm. Right? At the very beginning. I would like it to be kind of similar to that. Where Maxwell knows he can't win this fight if he fights fair. But he can distract people. This guy sells things for a living. He does use his words, to do things. And so while he's, fighting this guy, he's talking to him. He's making fun of him. He's talking about his weird head and his dumb little fucking convoy and all his stupid friends. And Rotter's getting angrier and angrier and angrier, right? And swinging more wildly and aggressively. Sort of a Viper and the Mountain sort of a fight, you know? We refer to that fight a lot. I was just thinking that, by the way.
If you go back through the history of the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast, there are a lot of Game of Thrones Mountain versus the Viper references.
Genuinely, I think that is probably the most referenced fight scene that we have. And he finally, Rotter just throws his knife down and he chases after him after a particularly devastating insult. And that's when Maxwell almost accidentally drives his knife into the rotted part of Rotter's skull. And his knife just goes into the brain and he swizzled it around. And then Rotter falls to the ground. Maxwell puts his hands up. He starts, yeah! And Jane's clapping and Jose is like, holy shit. I really didn't think that was going to work. And the farmer is like, oh my God, it worked. Yeah. That's crazy. And so he's really excited and all this stuff. And they're like, woo. And the war boys, the raiding party of the convoy is kind of they're all stunned, silent, because these aren't people who think for themselves. Like Maxwell said, they're waste trash, right? They're wasteland trash. They don't have a lot of motivation themselves, so they're kind of what do we do now? You can see that kind of on their face, right? And then Rotter stands up, and they're like, I've never seen a zombie come back that quick, and he's got something in his brain. And then Jane looks up at him, he's like, he's not a zombie. And Rotter takes the knife and pulls it out of his head, and blood and pus and ooze just pours down his face, and he screams and he charges Maxwell. And as he's about to grab Maxwell, he falls to the ground dead on the ground. He just onto the ground. And then Maxwell takes his knife and stabs him in the head again, just for good measure.
Yeah, just to double check.
And then says, all right, fair and square? Yeah, we good? And the convoy all says all right, I guess. And they go off. I should say, I meant to mention earlier, Rotter says, if you win the fight, me and my boys will leave. If you lose the fight, we kill you, we take the girl, we take the boy, and we take all the food, right? And Jane agrees to it automatically, and Maxwell's kind of oh, fuck. And Jose is like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But that's and that's the end of the episodes. They get a big pile of fruit and veg and all this fun stuff, and they get back on their cart and they march off into the sunset, off to new adventures and new fun things to have happen, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fun pilot episode. It's kind of showcasing what the show's going to be like, right?
Yeah.
And so we have more I realize now I've been talking for like 30 minutes, so I am just gonna kind of speed through things. But we have more like fun adventures they go through, and more kooky characters. I do have the idea of them meeting a mad scientist who has a hilltop mountain, a mountaintop laboratory where he has been, over the past 50 years, constructing this gigantic monolithic homunculus made of the dead. And it's like this wriggling mass of corpses, right? All put together and mashed together into one living thing. And its name is Franklin. And Franklin walks around. He, like, you would think he's going to be this, like, horrific monster, but he just kind of walks around and doesn't really do very much because he's not very smart. And so, it's just our protagonists are trying to figure out how to make Franklin not, like, scare everyone, while also, like, not, they don't want to kill him, because this guy is alive. Like, this scientist did do science, and he made a living thing out of the dead, right? Which is commendable, but they don't want to kill him.
The re-living undead.
Exactly.
I don't know.
The reliving undead. The reanimated. And so they put him in a big dress, and they send him off into the wilderness, because he's like a big horrible monster man, but he's wearing a cute little dress with a bow on top, and people kind of like, oh, he's nice. I like him, actually. He's cute. But like I said, that's the first half of the season is that sort of stuff. Second half of the season is the marching city, right? And you were talking about, like, emperors, right? How emperors would have, like, a giant plate that they had slaves underneath carry with the emperor on top. Think that, but it's a city. And there's millions of zombies, all of whom are chained, like, their heads are chained to this thing, and they're forced to march, right? And carry this city, you know?
Damn.
And this is the largest city in the world. It is the marching city. Whoa. And it's, they realized that any time that they built a city that was stationary, right? It would be overrun by zombies pretty quickly, you know? Because the zombies would know that, like, they would be able to sense that there are lots of people there. Like, the hordes that would attack these cities would just be so enormous that they would overthrow the city and kill everyone inside. And so, the solution that they had is to make sure the city is moving. And so, you have this, like, gigantic city that's very much built vertically, right? Like, super vertical city, very tall, and at the very top is the presidential mansion, the presidential manor, where President White sits on his throne, you know? And he sends out decrees. And so our main characters will be riding in their cart, and they'll be like, you know what? We need to get into the city, right? I haven't really figured out why they need to get into the city yet. I think it'll be Jose being like, I need to go back. I need to find Emmanuel White, who is the president's son and my love, and I need to tell him how I feel. Like, even if we can't be together or whatever, I need to get this off my chest. And Maxwell, after a little convincing from Jane, agrees, and they've done enough for each other, and they've become close enough friends that they're like, okay, we'll do this for you. Like, we will be put into dangerous situations for you. And so they get onto the city, right? And it's kind of like a kooky action sequence of them, like, riding up and, like, mush, you know, and these zombies are, like, moving as fast as they can, but they're fucking zombies, and they have, like, a piece of rotting meat that's hanging in front that keeps the zombies moving. And also, I should mention, the way that the marching city keeps moving is that they have prisoners, detainees, traitors, people who are exiled. They chain them to the city, and they put them in front of whatever direction they want to go, so the zombies chase them, you know? And that's how it moves, you know? And so there's just, like, kind of like 100 people who are just chained to the city, who are forced to run for their lives. And whenever one of them falls, they're just replaced by another prisoner. But they get onto the city, and they get into all sorts of kooky shenanigans and wild things. There is a masked vigilante in the city called the Fist, who fights corruption and fights organized crime in order to help the citizens of the marching city, the innocents of the city. And at first, Jose was like, this guy's not real. Like, he's fucking it's bullshit, right? And then they get saved by the Fist, and the Fist is like, I am the Fist. And he's very self-serious, and Jane loves him because he's a superhero. I am the Fist, right? And all this stuff. And they're doing all sorts of crazy adventures and dealing with organized crime and all sorts of fun stuff like that, until eventually Jose is able to meet his love, right, and confess his feelings, and Emmanuel confesses them back. He feels the same way. He loves Jose, right? They embrace and they kiss and they hold each other. And then President White arrives, and he has all of them arrested, including Emmanuel. He says, you know what? You're no son of mine. I can't have a son like this. Put them in jail. Send them down into the dungeons or whatever. And they go down to the dungeons, and they're like, well, way to go, fucking Jose, man. Like, this fucking sucks. And President White comes down, and that's when he explains what he's going to do to them, right? Which is, the marching city always needs more power. Zombies die. They rot away. And the only way to keep this city moving is to replace the zombies that fall away with new people, So we take the homeless, we take people who won't be missed, right? Drug addicts, visitors, tourists such as yourselves, and we kill them and we put them down and we put them to work. And that's what's going to happen to you. And so they figure this out, and it's kind of this huge, massive conspiracy, because apparently 30% of the population of the marching city has been earmarked for zombification.
Oh.
And so Emmanuel is like, no, I this can't be, Dad, no, and he exclaims, like, I won't allow you to do this. And it's like, it's already happened. This isn't a plan that is going to be put into place. I have a list of people who are going to be zombified within the next year. Like, we need a quick turnaround on this. And it's kind of like, have you ever seen that Doctor Who episode where there's the city of London is on the back of a space whale, right? And the whole thing is like, oh, we kidnapped the space whale and we put the fucking city of London on it, and we torture the space whale to keep the city together. And the Doctor has to choose, do I kill this whole city to save this beautiful, innocent creature, or do I allow this innocent creature to be harmed for the rest of time, for the rest of its existence, to keep all of these innocent people alive? And it's sort of that juggling of a thing, and there's not really a right answer to it, really. And that's kind of the point that this would be making, is that there's not really a good way to do it, but what President White is doing is obviously evil and vile. And so obviously our main characters escape the prison, right, with some quick thinking from Maxwell and Jane, because they're a couple of badasses, and Jose is a genius. He's like a whiz kid with machines and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they escape, and Emmanuel is able to rally the people of the marching city to overthrow his father and install himself as the president. And that way that they would make it okay to be gay. And we're actually not gonna kill all the homeless people and turn them into zombies. That's a fucking crazy idea. How about we go find a fucking horde of zombies and just put them on, right? Like, there's already zombies. We don't need to make more fucking zombies,
Yeah.
And so that's... and Emmanuel would overthrow, and he install himself as president, dictator for life, and Jose would be his they get married, and it's a lovely thing. And then after Jose, decides I'm gonna stay and be with my husband, and I'm happy, and accepted for the first time, and it's incredible, right? I'm so happy. And Maxwell and Jane are very happy for him, and they give him a hug. And maybe Jane gives him her Elmo doll, just as a memory, you know?
Yeah.
To always remember them. And then they get back in their cart and they ride off into the sunset yet again. Off to new adventures and new fun times with zombies and stuff. And that's the show, Raising Brains.
I like it. That was fun. I had an idea as you were explaining the ending, because I the whole time that you were talking about, like, well, we need a solution for this moving city, I was like, is he gonna throw in the giant reanimated zombie man? Real man.
God, I didn't.
As, like, I don't know, like they put wheels under the city instead, and now the zombie man is gonna, like, I don't know, push the city for food.
I hadn't even thought about that, but that's like a perfect idea.
And, like,
that,
it could combine, like, Jose could be like, well, I can, instead of this zombie solution, we can try to use some engineering and ingenuity. And so, like, they add, like, engines and like, wheels on the side or something. And you have this giant, massive reanimated man that, pushes it or pulls it for food in exchange.
He
like,
pulls
it's his
the
job.
city.
And he's like, and everybody loves him. It's like, it's not like he's the slave. He's like their emblem of the city or something.
Yeah, it then becomes the pulled city. Something like that. Yeah, no, that works perfectly. Franklin becomes the hero of the story. And he still wears his dress and his little bow on his head.
Yeah.
Because that's fun. I like that. But yeah, that's my show. I like it. It's a very much a classic VRP style show,
Mm-hmm.
Fun road trip adventure. Kooky characters and wacky scenarios, but it's fun.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's very fun.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. Oh,
no, I was going to I was trying to lead into it, but you jumped me. You jumped the gun.
I jumped the gun.
I started running really late after the gun. The gun fired, and I was behind.
Yeah, you were checking your phone. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, has been my co-host, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. Remember, we will be here next week with a brand new TV show for you to imagine and enjoy. And the show's title will be, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4. Chat 1 through 5, Jake.
1 through 5. 4.
This is a title I really like. The Garden of Sodom.
The Garden of Sodom. Okay. Wait, did you say the garden or the gardum? Garden.
The garden.
Okay.
Like a it's like a Garden of Eden, Garden of Sodom. Like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, interesting. Gonna be playing with some vices here, I guess. Don't really know.
Yeah, we like vices.
Okay, I'll have to figure something out. But
I love holding things together.
Okay. Well, the Garden of Sodom, I don't know what it's going to be, but it'll be here next week, and you'll enjoy it. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'll love it. I don't care if anyone else does. All right, have a good day, everybody.